Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: the Zimbabwean justice releases members of the main opposition party, including their vice president, arrested the day before. Thousands of people demonstrated in Mali's capital city Bamako, demanding the departure of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Ghana's Economic Fighters League's vigil held following George Floyd's murder leads to the arrest of activist Ernest Oliboa. Our top story today: in Zimbabwe, 6 members of the main opposition party, including Vice President Tendai Biti, were released on bail on Saturday after being arrested the day before for trying to dislodge a rival faction that occupied the headquarters of their movement in the country's capital city, Harare.
In the world, what government in the world interferes in the affairs of a private voluntary organization? And you send the army.
The Movement for Democratic Change Alliance has been divided between rival forces since the death of its founder, Morgan Tsvangirai, 2 years ago. His disputed successor, Nelson Chamisa, was the party's candidate in the 2018 presidential election, won by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. However, the opposition never recognized the president's victory, which they believe was tainted by multiple frauds.
All you do as Emmerson is to try and destroy Nelson Chamisa, is to try and destroy the people's movement, because Chamisa committed a crime by beating you heads down in 2018. Shame on you, Mnangagwa. Shame on you, ZANU-PF.
Internal divisions inside the main opposition party revived in March when the Supreme Court ruled that Nelson Chamisa had been illegally appointed. The majority of the party's members retained their confidence in Chamisa, but their rivals commissioned one of their own to take over the interim leadership of the party. This faction occupied the party's headquarters on Thursday evening. On Friday, militants loyal to Chamisa tried to enter the party's headquarters, but were arrested by security forces surrounding him.
We are the MDC Alliance, led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa. We have occupied this building since time immemorial.
Supporters of Nelson Chamisa accused President Mnangagwa of supporting the rival faction. In Mali, tens of thousands of people demonstrated in the capital Bamako on Friday, demanding the departure of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta under the leadership of a newly formed alliance made of influential Imam Mahmoud Dicko, opposition parties, and a civil society movement led by filmmaker and former Minister of Culture Umar Sissoko.
Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and his companions must pack up their bags this evening and give us back our votes.
Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta is short-lived. He will leave soon. His regime is short-lived, but Mali remains. In the name of Allah, with what is taking place here, if it does not appeal to Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, it will see something that will be remembered.
Demonstrators denounced the lack of government response to jihadist violence in the country, the poor management of economic and social affairs, as well as the recent parliamentary elections, which the president won despite fraud accusations. President Boubacar Keïta has not yet responded to the protests. In Libya, after the United Nations reported last week that the country's warring parties had agreed to resume negotiation talks to reach a lasting ceasefire, after a 3-month suspension, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi made a major announcement on Saturday in Cairo.
We announced the launch of the Cairo Declaration that includes an intra-Libyan initiative as a basis to solve the crisis in Libya within the framework of the United Nations resolutions and the previous efforts in Paris, Roma, Abu Dhabi and recently in Berlin. I would like to point out as well that this initiative calls for respecting all international efforts and initiatives by declaring a ceasefire from 6 a.m. Monday, June 8, 2020.
Pro-Eastern-based military commander Khalifa Haftar forces have been battling since April last year to seize the capital Tripoli from the government of national accord through clashes that killed hundreds and displaced 200,000. On the health front in Kenya, to stem the progression of coronavirus, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced on Saturday the reopening of a working-class neighborhood in Nairobi and the old town of Mombasa, but decided to extend the curfew in place since late March.
That due to the increase in patterns of infections, the cessation of movement into and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area, Mombasa, and Mandera be further extended by 30 days.
Since the 6th of May, it has been forbidden to enter or leave the Eastleigh neighborhood of Nairobi and the old town of Mombasa, considered to be the epicenters of the disease.
That the cessation of movement into and out of Eastleigh area of Nairobi and the specific limitations in force with respect to the old town area of Mombasa that is currently in force shall lapse at 4 a.m. on the 7th of June, 2020.
All the other existing measures to combat coronavirus remain in place. The president, whose citizens have urged to revive the economy, said the country is not ready to face the health consequences of further easing virus restrictions. With a population of about 51 million inhabitants, Kenya has only registered 2,767 cases of coronavirus contamination, including 752 recoveries and 84 fatalities since the beginning of the pandemic.
I can't breathe!
In Ghana, the Economic Fighters League, a self-proclaimed radical Nkrumahist movement, held a vigil on Saturday evening in Accra following the infamous murder of African-American George Floyd in support of Afro-descendants, victims of police brutality and segregation.
This justice is not just for George Floyd, but also for the Kadi girls, for Ahmed Swale, for all the people that police have brutalized in this country, elsewhere in Africa, elsewhere in the world, anywhere you go. Justice somewhere is justice everywhere, and that's what we are crying for.
In our generation, we have a mandate to bring about economic freedom in our lifetime. None of you are going to die. All of you are going to see Africa unite in your lifetime. Unity is a must. Africa must unite. And this is the reason why we have assembled here, in order to solidarize with all black people.
Security forces promptly arrived at the Black Star Square and arrested political leader and activist Ernesto Iboa, who organized the vigil, arguing that he had broken the law on public order.
The law says that if you are going to organize such an event, you need to notify the police within 5 days. We did that, and then the police now came and told us that they were not aware. Their superiors have told them to come and arrest us. So they arrested our leader, Ernesto Iboa, and we have all come here. If they are going to keep him, then they might as well keep all of us, because we are not going anywhere until he's released.
A few days before the vigil, Ghanaian police had warned the public against holding George Floyd-related protests in Accra and has maintained a strong presence outside the United States Embassy. Social protests continued over the weekend in Nigeria. In the country's capital city, Abuja, more than 200 campaigners marched on Friday, demanding the end of gender-based and sexual violence after several high-profile rape cases sparked outrage in the country.
The fact that we are letting sexual and gender-based violence to thrive in Nigeria is the real corruption in Nigeria. We are tired, and we are calling on the government to, as a matter of urgency, declare a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence.
In April, the story of an 18-year-old known only as Jennifer, allegedly raped by a group of 5 men in Kaduna, in the north of the country, sparked an outcry, not to mention reports that a 22-year-old Beninese student, Vera Uwela Omosuwa, had died 2 days after she was raped in a church in neighboring Benin. The campaigners' objective is to raise awareness on the issue and urge politicians to allocate funding to combat sexual violence, to ensure police responsiveness and to gain legal protection.
We want our inheritance rights to be respected. Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. Who are those that are scared of it? It is these same people who are oppressing and suppressing women, and we are tired. So now we are here to say that anybody who has not said anything definite on sexual and gender-based violence actually has no business in political office, and we are calling for everybody, all human beings in Nigeria, to ensure that those people are out.
We must continue to build capacity of our policemen. We must continue to build a generation of police officers who can empathize with our women, who can show tact, who can show understanding, and who can work with victims' family, activists, and other positive-minded citizens to combat rape.
There are really no laws guiding the woman and the girl child. So I think the police and the government should implement laws that will guide and protect women and girl children in the society.
The police stated last week that they had expressly ordered the deployment of additional investigators to specialist gender violence desks. On the security front, French Defense Minister Florence Parly said on Friday that French forces had killed the leader of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Abdelmalek Drogdel, last week in the northwest Mali town of Tessalit, neutralizing many of his allies in the process. Drogdel was responsible for regularly carrying out attacks and abductions of Westerners in the Sahel region, where an Islamist insurgency erupted in 2012, claiming thousands of military and civilian lives since then, to the dismay of Malian authorities. A member of the Citizen Observatory on Governance and Security, based in Bamako, believes the death of Drogdel should provide confidence in the action being taken to combat terrorism in Mali.
This announcement is to show that these armed forces, be it French or the Sahel, are taking action and achieving results. As I said, many international partners were dubious about the effectiveness of the armed intervention, whether French or Sahelian, following the example of the joint G5 Sahel force. But this announcement, which is presented as a military success, could strengthen confidence in the measures against terrorism taken in the country.
France, which has about 5,000 troops deployed in its anti-jihadist back and forth in the Sahel region, also claimed that operations against other terrorist threats in the area are continuing. On the international scene in Britain, demonstrators toppled the statue of notorious British slave trader Edward Colston in Bristol on Sunday before dumping it in a harbour during protests against racism and police brutality following African-American George Floyd's killing 2 weeks ago in the United States. Interior Minister Priti Patel condemned the toppling, calling it utterly disgraceful. The city's police vowed to carry out an investigation. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.